academia is just another indoctrination program teaching people how to comply with a certain way of being, thinking, and doing. And at the end of the day, the exact number of exogenous carbohydrates required by a human being, none. None at all.
What do people typically do wrong on carnivore?
Often they will try to take in a whole bunch of organ meats, especially liver, believing it to be a superfood. No, it isn't. It's a bad idea. Don't do that. There is no evidence for any reason that any person should ever attempt to intervene in what their blood cholesterol is, because it is under the control of your genes, and your genes know what they're doing.
All right, today's a good one. I've got my friend Bart Kay here, someone I know a lot of you highly follow and respect. And I've seen you break down complex topics with brutal precision. Bart, thanks for chatting with me.
My absolute pleasure. It's always a privilege and a solemn duty, I think, to cross-pollinate in our community so that everybody's face gets known and that we do the best that we can to promote each other's weas, as it were.
Yeah, let's do that. All right. So when I look at you and people would say you're smart, I can imagine as a little kid, like, were you just naturally, did you naturally excel in school, or is it something you really had to work at?
Right. I am blessed with above average intelligence by whatever metric you want to assess that with. Typically
IQ.
in my youth, IQ was the one that was typically used, and it still is. It's not the only measure of intelligence or whatever, but I've always scored at the very, very high end on IQ throughout my life. I also express, apparently, a particular form of autism, which is usually called pathological demand avoidance syndrome. And I've only got a problem with half of those words, the first one and the last one. Pathological and syndrome. It's neither pathological nor is it a syndrome. It's just an individual wiring, which I put down personally. This is my opinion. It doesn't have to be anybody else's, but I put it down to medical interventions undertaken while I was an infant by my parents under the belief that the medical profession knew what they were doing and that it was a good idea to inject infants with such things, which I don't believe is or was a good idea. But nonetheless, that was done. It was out of my hands. My parents did that. They did the best they could, of course. I'm not blaming them. I blame the establishment. But anyway, this wiring that I have leads me to resist with all my might any attempt that anybody tries to impose anything upon me.
Oh, okay,
including
get
me
it.
sometimes, including me, including
Okay,
self-discipline. That's been a lifelong battle to get any self-discipline together at all, and I'm still working on it.
but I don't know. You look like you have it together, though. I mean, you
Well, it's
produce
all
all
an
these
act for the
videos.
cameras. It's all an act for the cameras. You know, if anyone thinks I've got it together, just ask my mum or anyone that lives with me, like Pim, that spends a lot of time around me. She'll tell you whether I've got it together or not. I'm joking a little bit. Yeah, so it's, I have my struggles with life in terms of, I really battle very, very hard against. It's an immediate response, and anytime anybody tries to impose anything on me, I'm going to resist with everything I've got. And that includes a schooling system that was designed from the ground up to teach young children to conform.
So how
That's what
did you do in
schooling is.
school? Did you
Poorly.
say, I'm not going to learn that because I'm not going to use that in life? Or did you go and have all these great
That was one
grades?
excuse I used. Another one was, I know more than this teacher does anyway. It's obvious this teacher's as thick as two short planks, because most of them are
Hmm.
primary school teachers. Not all of them. Don't get upset with me. If you're a smart primary school teacher, good for you. But I didn't come across too many of those when I was a kid. Yeah, so I struggled, I battled. I did enough to not be held. Well, I was actually held back 1 year, actually.
But
I
you
was
went
always a year
into
older.
academia.
I went into academia eventually, but I left school having finished the last year of schooling that was available. I was 18 years of age. And then I spent the next 9 or 10 years doing stuff like working in a service station, pumping petrol. I was night shift cashier for a while. I played guitar and sang in rock bands and layered up and chased around the skirt, if you know what I mean, and did everything that young rock star blokes did, and smoked everything that could possibly be smoked and drank everything that could possibly be drank, and sometimes both, and did what I wanted to do because no one was going to tell me what to do. And I'm much better now.
I think so. What made
Well,
you
not
turn
really. Not really.
I'm not
Still,
gonna
no one's
say,
going to tell me what to do.
yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But I'm not saying what made you turn around, because it's not about that. But what made you seek different ways?
I think that the biggest turning point in my life was when somebody suggested to me, have you ever considered that you might possibly be autistic in this particular pathological demand avoidance way? And I said, well, no, I'd never considered myself to be autistic. I have a brother and a sister who are both autistic in a different form of autism. They have Asperger's. I don't have Asperger's. Ergo, I assumed myself to be the normal child that doesn't have any of these issues. No, Charlie Brown. Yes, I do. I just had a different form, and nobody thought about it. This came to my understanding as what was going on when I was in my early to mid 40s. And it was a big turning point because now I understood myself a bit better, and ergo now I'm able to work with myself in such a way as to encourage myself to fit in a bit better. Still not completely fit in, but fit in better than I would have done and did do up to that point.
Do you see a silver
So,
lining? Kind of like what you experienced, this
well,
can help
yes.
others?
Well, I don't think. I mean, it's probably not accurate to say there's nothing in my life I would change, because it all had a value, it all had a purpose. It was all part of the great plan for me to get to where I am now. I love where I am now. I love the life I have now. I love what I've achieved. I'm very proud of what I've achieved despite my problems and issues with achieving things. If I could change anything, it would be to understand myself better at a younger age and start the process of turning myself around and getting a hold of myself much earlier.
I think that's a lot
Like,
of people think that, like myself, getting my nutrition diet in much earlier than I did, and not after I turned 50. But
exactly.
I think the brain is fascinating because there's so many things that could be considered pathologic and that aren't, like hypersensitivity. It's more like I see it more like a quirk.
Yeah.
The high IQ, I have a high IQ. I never made use of it. I never went into academia. So,
Well, going
or
into
maybe that's
academia
smart too,
is,
right?
well, it is smart because going into academia is in no way going to use your intelligence quotient. Academia is just another indoctrination program teaching people how to comply with a certain way of being, thinking, and doing.
Like interpreting the guidelines, the nutritional guidelines.
Like,
What's
this
the
is how
best
you do
diet?
science. These are the rules of
Evidence-based.
science, etc., etc., etc. But then, these people that talk about various fields of scientific endeavor being evidence-based, like physiology, nutrition, medicine, anything really to do with human health, the term evidence-based and human health science at large, they are mutually
So,
exclusive.
yeah,
There is no science involved. There is no evidence involved. The whole area is a ring-fenced area of ideology, theology, and bought and paid for propaganda.
I actually had a
That's
chat with
interesting, isn't it?
ChatGPT today and asked
Okay.
them, why do you say LDL is atherogenic? No, I can't pronounce that word.
Atherogenic is the
Yeah,
word.
atherogenic.
Atherogenic.
And so it was giving different answers actually to a person that is in that space and knows about it and has chatted to ChatGPT about it before and to a newbie. And then I said, well, isn't that like propaganda? And then I said, well, I'm programmed by so and so, and there are certain incentives and certain narratives I have to follow. I thought, like, what? Yeah, I mean, it's obvious, but still, it was funny that it actually spelled it out. But then you went on to teaching, and you have people who don't get your ideas as quickly as you would want them to, right?
Sure.
Is it frustrating to teach them, and are some just beyond hope?
I never like to think of any of my students in the past as being beyond hope. However, unfortunately, some of them in reality absolutely were not going to be able to be taught anything because they simply were not equipped with the critical thinking skills, the independent thought skills to actually get a hold of what I was saying and make sense of it. I would still treat all my students the same. Of course I treat my students the same, but one of the things I refused to do throughout my career in academia was actually boil anything down lower than the minimum standard that I would expect of a student learning that topic at university level to pass my course.
So no bell curve.
In other words, I never
adjustment.
passed off a student that did not deserve to pass. I always said, you can return next semester.
It's interesting because one thing we learned in Germany was different between the German and the US school system is that the US school system, Canadian probably too, just questions on facts. And I mean, answers like question and multiple choice. And there's not much critical thinking in that. Whereas in Germany, we had to write essays. We had to show how we got to the solution, not just check something. So it's, that's 30 years ago.
When I started in academia at the beginning of my career, the metric by which I was judged at the end of each academic year as an educator was what grades do my students get. By the end of it, some 20x years later, whatever it was, that whole thing had devolved completely. The whole theology around higher education, the metric by which I was judged at the end in my last year as an academic was, what was your student satisfaction ratio?
Well, I'm guessing somebody you don't pass or fail is not going to like you much.
It's going to not like me, no. Because here's the thing. At the end of the day, my job is to teach students to the best of my ability and help them get the best grades that that student is possibly capable of getting, and to encourage them to go that step further to get the grade they are capable of. My job is not to be your friend. It's not for you to feel satisfied with my performance as an educator.
The same with parents.
Exactly.
I'm not my kids' friend. I mean, I love them. But that's different. I also want to teach them. I want to shift now to carnivore. So you eat a carnivore diet. I think
plus minus, pretty much.
Plus minus, coffee, occasional.
Coffee, a bit of alcohol here and there because I'm still a hedonist and I'm still working on that self-discipline. The odd bit of junk food now and then. I would estimate myself at 95% carnivore across time, mostly.
I consider myself hyper carnivore, which seems to be a lot of confusion to many people because they think hyper carnivore is even more carnivore than carnivore.
Right.
But it's not. It's like up to 30% from plants. So
that's right.
Even though I don't eat that many,
right.
I'm more like in the 10% range probably.
So you're very similar to myself then, yeah.
Yeah, also 90%. Coffee, no alcohol because liver.
Yeah.
I did have a few questions from my group, and I'm just trying to find the notes here.
Sure.
He says, people with diabetes who use insulin are always told to take glucose or sugary foods when their blood sugar gets too low. But no one warns them about the long-term effects of fructose from those sugars on the liver, eyes, kidneys, nerves. And when they
Yes.
ask diabetes associations about it, they don't get answers. And I remember that too. When my son was diagnosed, they said, like, you can give him glucose tabs, or you can just buy him these rocket candies or any candy, basically, orange juice. But they really dismissed the fructose content. And
Yeah.
that's especially bad for diabetics,
You bet.
thinking
You bet.
polio pathway.
Here's the thing. What they're doing there, once again, is the thing that the allopathic medicinal community always does, and that is to react to a symptom rather than proact to prevent that symptom from occurring in the first place. Here's my
Yes,
question. You say, when the blood sugar gets low, you need to take some sugar. Here's my question. Why is the blood sugar low?
because insulin was overdosed. It took me actually a little bit to get to that conclusion. But I didn't.
Right.
I listened to Gary Taubes, and he said, if a type 1 diabetic has a hypoglycemia, it's always overdosed insulin. I said, no, 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 no. My son is like running out in the snow playing, and then his blood sugar crashes. But I didn't take the next step. Okay, for that activity, he had to have much insulin on board.
That's right. So, you know, at the end of the day, how is glucose channeled, if you like, out of the blood and into the cells? Well, it's under the influence of insulin, among other things. Insulin is a very important player in that process. The reason that type 1 diabetics are prescribed a strict diet of this many carbohydrates of this kind at this time of day, this number of times a day, is to match with a regime of injecting themselves with an expensive exogenous form of insulin that they only need if they're taking those glucose and other sugars in that are being prescribed for them to take in. The whole thing is a self-supporting business model.
Yeah, for a
And it's
10-year-old
paid for
boy,
by the pharmaceutical companies.
that would have been 60 grams of carbs per meal, 3 meals plus 15 grams of carbs per snack, 3 snacks, and maybe a nighttime snack. It was a lot. I
Yes,
think
it
he
was.
never ate that many carbs before he was diagnosed.
No. And at the end of the day, the exact number of exogenous carbohydrates required by a human being, none. None at all. Even a type 1 diabetic, if they get their insulin dosing correct and in line with the ideology that carbohydrates are not required. So those people that produce no insulin of their own can do very, very well on a zero or near zero carbohydrate intake diet if they take a longer lasting form of insulin with a lower spike associated with it, and in a very, very small dose. Just enough insulin to do the other roles of insulin, because insulin does other things other than just traffic sugar. For example, it keeps the kidney tissue viable, it keeps the thyroid viable.
It stores fat.
It causes the storage of fat when that's required under other circumstances, etc. Yes. So the whole model by which the diabetes associations around the world work is not only fallacious, that's a good word, isn't it? I like the word fallacious. It's nonsense, but it's not just that it's erroneous. It's not just that it's a mistake by these.
It's
It's not a
dangerous.
mistake. It's dangerous, and they know damn well that it's contraindicated and dangerous, and they know damn well that it's underpinned by money. And yet they carry on doing it because they get away with it.
So
It's
guess what they
criminal.
told us? If he doesn't get his carbs,
Mm.
he's not going to grow as he
Right,
should.
which is
His brain,
nonsense.
he needs carbs for brain development, for
Yeah,
growth. And he's, of
yeah,
course, going to resent us if we don't feed him cake.
that's right.
And as a parent,
Yes.
that's like, it's a strong message, really.
Yeah,
Unfortunately, I didn't pick up on that until I went into the low carb space. Now I know.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, fancy that saying to a parent of a diabetic child, "Your child will hate you if you don't feed them carbs."
Yeah, it's basically what we were told. In other words, they're going to develop an eating disorder.
Yes. Okay. Well, can you back that up with anything?
Now I know, no, but
Yeah.
back then, obviously, I believed that because it is a challenge to have a kid in an environment where everyone has their Lay's, chips, and all that in their lunchbox, and basically just junk food.
Yeah.
The kids in the school have junk food in their lunchbox. And we were actually the exception. We had sandwiches. I mean, all right, but I don't no. But
I
it
know what
was
you
not
mean.
as bad as everyone else's anyway.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, this polyol pathway, as I understand it, is activated at a certain level. It's probably around 126, 120, 140, which is 140 is, I think, 7 millimole. And it means that some of the glucose I eat is then also changed into fructose. So there's even more fructose. The fructose load on the liver is even bigger. And they know that this causes neuropathy, blindness, kidney disease. But the ADA keeps saying a well-managed type 2 diabetic or type 1 diabetic, it doesn't really matter, is up to an A1C of 7.
Yeah.
It makes me incredibly angry, honestly.
Yeah.
I mean, especially being affected by that. Not only myself, type 2, reversed, but also my son, type 1.
Yeah, look, I have a nephew in his early 20s with type 1 diabetes that he's had for 10 years or more. And he's always been congratulated by the public health nurse here on keeping his A1C around about 7.7. Great job, they're telling him. Great job.
They told us to, as parents, hey, A1C 6.9, you're doing fantastic.
That's right.
And this was actually accompanied by them saying that children do not suffer any consequences from high blood sugars. So just let them run high. It's okay.
Yeah.
Seriously. Yeah.
Yeah, I know they're saying that. It's criminal. It's nothing short of criminal. At the end of the day, the people behind this, the money behind this, number one, the money behind this needs to be seized. The assets of these people need to be seized. They need to lose the lot. They need to be held accountable to the full extent of the law for their criminal activity. It's nothing short of criminal. It is a form of attempted genocide, and it's driven by money, and they know it. There's nothing else you can say about it. It's absolutely beyond disgusting.
Profits over health.
Yeah.
That's what I put it as hashtags.
Look,
even though
anybody out there that thinks
anymore.
anybody out there that thinks the public health system is at all interested in the health or well-being of the individual person, look, I've got you some waterfront property to sell you in Montana as well, if you believe that.
You do? Awesome.
All right. How much would you like to pay for my waterfront property in Montana? Yeah.
Whatever you say, it's probably worth it.
Of course.
No,
Trust me, I'm the science. I'm safe and effective. Don't question the science.
Yeah, that's the most anti-scientific statement.
Of course it is. Yeah. It's ridiculous. Yeah.
Yeah. So another question was on insulin, type 1 diabetic, and blood sugar is already up, but they are hungry. They want to eat. So this person is taught that fat and carbs together will like keep the blood sugar elevated for longer. And I know that every time he had pizza, he was just up forever. But it's especially the saturated fat, and that doesn't really sound right to me.
It's not right.
Should a type 1 person, when they already have elevated blood sugars and they eat, avoid saturated fat?
No, they shouldn't. What they should avoid is the intake of all carbohydrates. Because at the end of the day, the dietary requirement for exogenous carbohydrates in humans is still zero. Not 1 single gram ever. That's what should be avoided, because that's the unnecessary input. Yes, look, absolutely, fats and carbohydrates interact with each other in such a way as to lock the carbohydrates out. It's a thing called the Randall cycle. There are 50-something videos on my channel about the Randall cycle if people want to go and have a look at that playlist to learn all about that from whatever different angle and, take your time. Yes, that's true. However, there is a dietary daily requirement for the intake of fats, various fats.
Essential fatty acids.
Correct. There is a requirement for the intake of enough reactive food substance that can be used for the provision of metabolic work.
Chemical
and
energy.
The preferred source of that is chemical energy, exactly. The preferred source of that in a human being is fatty acids, not carbohydrates. So you need some carbohydrate. No, you don't. You need some fat, absolutely. You need to base your energy intakes off fat, absolutely. What you need to do is avoid carbohydrates and change your insulin dosing to suit that.
And we do that avoiding the C word, calories.
Yes, the C word.
I'm now at the point where I really think that calories don't matter at all.
Good.
Because we don't, like you say, we don't eat them, we don't burn them.
That's right.
They are really bad proxy. I understand why they would use them as a proxy, but they have fueled this. This is a 100 calorie snack. This is fine. This is healthy. I'm going to stay under my calorie limit and not really knowing how many calories they are eating or expending because they aren't.
So equating the metabolic work potential derivable from consuming reactive food substances that we can metabolically use for that process is akin to saying to someone like, well, if we take the number of socially acceptable numbers of genders and we divide that by inflation, how much climate change do we get?
Oh, I know. No. But yes.
Calories have nothing whatever to do with metabolic process. Not a damn thing.
I was... my first step was to think we have to be in a calorie deficit. The next step was to think...
You can't be in a deficit of calories.
I know. Yeah. The next step was to think, okay, the calorie deficit is an observation after the fact. Because when we lost weight, there was a deficit. But now I really think it doesn't matter at all. It's just a bad proxy from the get-go.
Yes, that's correct. So for those that haven't quite cottoned onto it yet, the argument here is this. The calorie is by definition and by measurement, it is a measurement of kinetic energy, heat energy, that you can evolve from a food substance if you rapidly combust that food substance in a bomb calorimeter using a large electrical impulse, for example, which instantly vaporizes it and releases CO2 gas, H2O, and some heat energy in the form of photons. Photons are an excitation of the electromagnetic field. Their exact rest mass is 0. There are several ramifications of that which you cannot escape. And here they are. Number 1, take any number you like. Let's say your weight on a weighing scale, in kilograms or pounds or stone in ounces or whatever you like. It doesn't matter. Your weight. Take that number, whatever it is. Now, add any number of zeros to that. How does it change your weight? Not at all. Not a jot, because any number plus any number of zeros remains unchanged. The same is true if you remove any number of zeros. The weight remains unchanged. That's the first ramification. You can't get around that. The second ramification is this. When you understand basic physics, you understand that anything that has zero rest mass, because of its zero rest mass, that tells us inescapably and absolutely that that particle, that photon, does not interact with the Higgs field. That's why it has no rest mass. As a consequence of that, it can not be brought to rest in any inertial frame. You cannot bring a photon to rest. That means you can't consume it. So given that you can't consume it, you can't expend it. It evolves from a substance. When that substance is burned, it escapes as heat entropy, which has nothing to do with metabolism, except it's a byproduct of it, by the way. It will not and cannot affect your weight, mass, or body makeup in any way, shape, or form. The whole metric is absolutely, utterly ridiculous. Period. There we go. Done.
I made this little thought experiment. I mean, it wasn't really good, but anyway, if you heat up a cup of water to boiling, and then does it have more calories?
No.
Yeah, it does. I think 18. Well, okay, maybe I shouldn't have
you can
asked.
evolve. It will evolve more photons. More photons will be brought into existence as a function of the cooling of that water as soon as you allow it to cool below the temperature that you've heated it to. It will exude photons. Photons not interacting with the Higgs field, not having a mass or dimension, ergo do not literally exist, can be brought into being like that.
And obviously, you're not going to gain weight from drinking hot tea or hot coffee, as
Correct,
much as
you're
you're
not.
not going to gain weight from just sitting in the sun and getting
Right.
really hot.
You got it. That's it. Yep. Awesome.
Yeah. So back to carnivore. Now, people, do you think they should track metrics, or should they just eat intuitively? And now I'm talking about people who are metabolically sick, not healthy people.
Okay, if you're metabolically unwell, it is likely because you have abused your body by consuming a large amount of exogenous carbohydrates for a number of years, in which case your satiety signaling will be faulty. You will overeat, probably. And you don't want to be doing that. So in your case, if you are metabolically damaged, then you probably do need some guide on what the appropriate intakes are for you. Here's what they are. 2 grams of protein per kilogram of non-fat mass per day, preferably in one sitting, and an amount of fat, preferably animal fat, to satiety, which will change on a day-by-day basis depending on your energetic requirements that day, what you're doing that day, how you feel that day, your stress and distress levels, the environment in which you place yourself, the ambient temperature, all sorts of things.
I'm wondering about...
And you can also get feedback from your body if you, for example, eat too much fat, well, you'll get the shits.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yeah.
I'm wondering about women. So I dropped about 120 pounds. I did bring it down. My satiety signals are much better as long as I don't eat junk. I mean, and with junk, I don't mean McDonald's. I mean actually eating keto treats that I shouldn't be eating.
That's right.
They still mess up my satiety. When I eat only meat, I do get the cues. Unless I have a migraine, then every bets are off. But for women, I find it's easier on me, at least, to eat twice. Because once it seems to stress my body. I don't know.
Okay. That'll be to do with the metabolic damage of years gone by that still isn't quite resolved yet, probably.
Okay.
I'm not going to say that women are fundamentally the same as men. I'm not that stupid. They're not. And look, if a person finds that 2 meals a day is ideal for them in terms of their affect, their outcome, how they interact with the universe, I'm not going to begrudge that. And I'm not going to stand there with my arms folded and go, tut, 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 you did it wrong and you never really were a carnivore. What I'm saying when I say ideally 1 meal a day is that's a commentary that's aimed at the middle of the bell-shaped curve. People are
kind of like the
people
proper human diet, which is the spectrum.
Sure. Absolutely.
Talking about mistakes, you did it wrong. What do people typically do wrong on carnivore?
Often they will try to take in a whole bunch of organ meats, especially liver, believing it to be a superfood. No, it isn't. It's a bad idea. Don't do that.
Copper.
Copper toxicity is the likely outcome if you go too hard on that. A lot of people believe that the intake of huge amounts of protein is a good idea, vastly more than the 2 grams level I was talking about. That's
SPC.
not a good idea. Yeah. SPC is an idea that's being put forward by an absolute imbecile, name of Enfield at the moment. He's all over the X platform with it. Luckily, my good friend Ted is all over him. I keep telling Ted he should probably tone it down a bit, but he just won't listen to me. I can't do a thing with Ted. He's his own bear. He has his own way of expressing himself, which is very coarsely and very abruptly. And I can't blame him, frankly, because let me be very clear about this. This Dr. Enfield bloke does not have the first clue of what he's talking about. He is on a bandwagon, putting a stall out there trying to make money by having this revolutionary new idea, SPC, satiety per calorie, he calls it. The only problem being you still cannot consume any calories ever. It is impossible. Still.
I did tell him that. And he said,
so
what else should I
did.
measure? What else should I measure? And I said, well, measure macros.
Yeah.
Not calories, just as an idea.
That's right.
And he said,
right.
interesting, but it's stopped there. So
it stops there because that makes it a bit more complex, and he's trying to aim what he's doing at the lowest common denominator. Plus, he wants to be this revolutionary guy that's come up with this idea that no one else has seen, this obvious thing that we've all missed somehow. The obvious thing that's been missed in field has been missed by you, son. And the thing you've missed is that you cannot consume calories. So to say satiety per calorie is fundamentally wrong. Bad advice.
The premise
and
is
frankly
wrong.
Stupid. Yeah.
And the only thing, I don't even go into the weeds of what it rest energy and what you talked about, but it's just, if you look at pathways, it's not in any physiology. It's not part of any physiology.
That's right. It's just,
well, you know what I want to say.
It's junk pseudoscience. And the other thing he's doing is he's telling people all sorts of things about how it's great to be eating all sorts of plant material. Have a good balanced diet, consisting of all this nice, satisfying plant material.
Because it's high in fiber.
That's right, and stuff. Ergo, high in satiety per so-called calorie. That's just stupid.
I don't think satiety and fullness are really the same.
No, they're not. Although fullness, distension of the stomach, will give you a sense of satiety in terms of, it'll give you the sense of fullness, and it will stop you eating.
Yeah.
But it won't make you feel like you've had what you need, because if you don't get what you need nutritionally, your body will still scream for it.
The cravings.
Exactly.
And it's interesting, even when you're really full, you can still fit in a few cookies.
Yes.
I mean, I could.
Because,
I probably still could. Honestly, I had this one keto treat. I'm not going to name it because I really like the guys who make it. But I could eat a full meal and be not hungry and still eat the full treat, which was high in energy.
Yeah.
So if they overeat organs, if they overeat protein, what else not enough fat, not enough fuel, basically. What else can they do wrong?
Eating too many times a day, too many small meals.
Grazing.
That's a bad idea. Yeah, grazing. There's no need for that.
Is there anything special about how do you prepare the food? And I'm not
really
a raw food eater, and I know we have been cooking our meat forever. But what about smoking it or dehydrating it?
Any of these ways of getting meat sort of preserved or kept for a period of time, fine as a part of your diet. I believe that the basis
on travels.
The basis of your diet should be fresh meat cooked to your liking daily. Simple as that.
Frozen is
Really.
fresh, right?
Well, if you thaw something that was frozen the day that it was caught, killed, or whatever, it's still probably relatively fresh. Yeah.
Yeah, it's basically
But
how I get my meat. It's
but
from
I mean,
a,
if you've had some meat that's been frozen for over a year, then it will have aged some still
it
in that
will
time.
not be in my freezer that long. We
No.
buy like half a cow at a time, so
Yeah.
that's gone by then. I think I have
Cool.
a bag of fat that I haven't used up. That might have to go.
Mm,
Um, so there is really not much you can do wrong then on a carnivore diet unless you really try.
that's right. Yeah.
So the metrics, I asked you about the metrics, whether you should go by how you feel or do the metrics. Now we have people in the PhD, like in Dr. Berry's community, I volunteer there as a coach.
Mm, mm,
We have people who are strict carnivore and their A1C goes up.
mm-hmm.
And I don't really have a good explanation. The one that's floating around is, I think, was made popular by Dr. Paul Mason, that the
Mm-hmm.
red blood cells live longer.
Yeah.
But they're still being glycated, though.
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that still a problem? I don't know.
Well, at the end of the day, the prognostic value of an elevated A1C does assume that those red blood cells have the normal average lifespan of a red blood cell, and to have glycation at that level is problematic. Even that assertion is tenuous, let alone if you apply the same prognostic value to an A1C test. If you eliminate that assumption of the lifespan of the red blood cell and it's actually been around much longer. I'm not real huge on it. It doesn't concern me at all that those who consume a strict carnivore diet do, it seems, tend to have an A1C that can drift up 5, 5.2, 5.4, whatever. And the reason I'm not concerned about that is because there is absolutely no evidence extant anywhere in the literature that a person who has a stable blood glucose level is at all in a problematic situation, even if their A1C is elevated, because actually at the end of the day, an A1C of 5 point something, if your blood glucose is doing that, that means there has to have been a number of periods of time where the blood glucose was very, very high.
Yeah.
Whereas there are other periods of time where it's very, very low. The damage is being done up here, not down here, where the average is.
And I think the variability, so being high and then low and then high again, that's problematic too. What they
Yeah,
call like time
exactly.
and range.
Yeah. And so, a person whose blood glucose is stable, there's no evidence that that's problematic in terms of the A1C, which is only ever supposedly a prognostic view on someone's likelihood of there being oxidative and glycative damage and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, there's just nothing out there to say that this is going to be a problem for somebody at all.
Unless that person wears the CGM and the CGM matches the A1C.
Well,
And I'm not
again,
even talking about the variability. I'm talking about elevated
okay,
glucose.
look, if you're a carnivore and your blood glucose is elevated, that's because your homeostatic set point, the hysteresis value of the glucose in your blood, is higher. And it's higher because that's under the control of your gene set, that gene set being the absolute peak of evolution to this point. Your genes, my genes, everybody's genes are the absolute peak of evolution. 3,800 million years of it. Our genes know what they're doing. They will optimize your physiology on the basis of the environment in which you place that physiology.
We were the ones that survived.
That's right.
We made the cut.
Yeah.
Even though now when you look around,
as long as your behavior is in line with your genetic gift, your anthropological gift, a species-appropriate, species-specific diet, or a proper human diet, as Dr. Berry calls it, as long as you're doing that, there is absolutely no reason or evidence extant anywhere on this planet that can tell you that's a bad idea
So
or
you might not
predict
even have
your
to,
outcomes.
you might not even have to try to lower it because that's
Oh,
just your personal biology.
that's right.
Interesting. I
In the
never
same
thought
way
about
that your
that.
cholesterol will go up, and you should absolutely not make any attempt whatsoever to try and intervene in that. Absolutely, you should not. The same is true of your
Not
blood
when it's from
glucose.
diet,
That's right.
unless,
Or
I don't
or
know.
any other stage. There is no evidence for any reason that any person should ever attempt to intervene in what their blood cholesterol is, because it is under the control of your genes, and your genes know what they're doing.
What if they did have a heart event, though? Isn't that kind of like then a gray area?
Well, look, here's the thing. Every year, there are a number of people that present with sunburn at Miami Beach on any given day. And if we go back and ask those people whether they bought ice cream that day, you will find that there is a very powerful correlation between the intake of ice cream and sunburn being suffered that day. Does that mean we deal with the sunburn scourge by outlawing the sale of ice cream? No. It's ridiculous, isn't it?
But we
Because,
could bring down shark attacks if we sold less ice cream. We would
well,
drop.
it's the same deal, isn't it? It's the same
Yeah.
association. Yeah. There you go. It's all the ice cream sellers' fault, both sunburn and shark attacks. I mean,
I
also,
saw
the
a lot
release of
of,
movies by Nicolas Cage is
yeah,
associated with
exactly
drownings
that
in
one.
swimming pools.
We could
Does that mean
make
we should outlaw
the
movies by
world,
Nicolas Cage? I think we should. And it's
we
not
could
because
make
of
it
drownings
such
in
a
swimming
safe
pools.
place. Actually, there are a few movies I really like that he made. A few of them, not all of them.
Oh,
He
we
just
can't be friends
made.
then.
Hmm?
We can't be friends then. I'm kidding.
Oh no.
I'm kidding. Nicolas
Yeah,
Cage is fine. I'm just picking on him because I can. Yeah,
yeah.
cool.
I mean, this doesn't really tie good into the next topic I wanted to talk about, was mental health. So there has been a lot of a new study coming out actually of the ketogenic diet, not the carnivore diet, but the ketogenic diet, reversing bipolar with Jen Bazuki at the forefront, financing these trials and
Yeah.
or supporting these trials, I guess. Metabolic Mind. I think that's really interesting. It is really, if we eat to our biology, we will get better.
Yep. I mean, that's a fairly robust statement, really. If you eat a diet appropriate for your speciation, or closer to appropriate for your speciation than the standard mixed macronutrient healthy balanced diet, as they call it, then a person's affect, a person's health presentation is of course likely to increase. Now, a ketogenic diet is vastly better than a standard mixed macronutrient diet. Yes, it is. But it is not the optimal diet for a human being. The optimal diet for a human being is carnivore, not ketogenic.
Hypercarnivore.
And a carnivore diet properly executed, properly put together, is not particularly ketogenic, actually.
Because the ketogenic diet, the definition is it puts you in ketosis.
That's
and you
right.
don't have to be in ketosis to get better. Even though for
Correct.
some,
You don't.
probably for treating metabolic disease, ketosis really has or epilepsy. They want them to be in a therapeutic level, I guess.
Yeah.
Like really high. Yeah, I think that's like all super interesting. You're being asked a lot of questions. Is there questions you are never asked and you wish you would be asked that question?
What is your bank account details so I can pay you millions and millions of dollars for the completely priceless information that I give out for free every single day of my life? No one's ever asked me for my bank account details so that they can put $100 million into my account.
Yeah.
I'm being a little bit facetious, but I'm happy to receive just about any question so long as it's coming from a genuine place of someone who wants to learn, who wants to understand. I'm not going to respond well or positively to some ideologue questioning me in a manner that's loaded and designed to try and straw man or misrepresent me or any of that kind of stuff. I will respond very strongly to those people in general. But if you're a person who genuinely wants to understand and wants to learn from someone who actually knows a bit about this, there are no stupid questions. So please, guys, feel free. I do answer a number of questions for free every day that come through into my email. If it's just a quick one, I can. But also understand I'm a busy man. I'm also very popular, believe it or not. I know, it's stunning, but I am. And as such, maybe you might just want to book yourself in for a one-on-one consultancy with me if you've got a lot of questions. I'm a lot cheaper than others that have far less knowledge and credence than I do. A lot cheaper because I believe it's a public service that I ought to be doing, frankly. So absolutely the way to get hold of me to do consultancies is if you type in bit.ly/Bart-Kay, you'll find that there's an ability there for you to join a subscription service where you can have consults for any period of time. And then when you've finished and you've got what you wanted, you just cancel it, pretty much.
All the information is on your YouTube channel too.
Yes, it is. All my different YouTube channels and all my various places that you can go to subscribe to things and get Cerule products, which is very important too, by the way. You should get those. You can do all of those things there. You can also get Cerule from Roxana, can't you, if you want to?
Yeah, I'm kind of like still in the trial phase. I have tried it at the higher dose. I've tried it at the normal dose, and I'm not quite seeing the effects I want to see. I think my immune system is very stubborn, very damaged. So actually, I'm going to try when I can build up the courage.
Cool.
Lion diet again. That gave me the longest stretch of any in connection with Cerule. So I'm still in the trial phase. But yes, actually, I do have a link, and people can buy it. And I'm going to put
Perhaps
all
you should put the links underneath the video, and they can go straight there. Yeah, cool.
I'm going to put them in the description, and yeah, why not put them on the video too?
Exactly.
I would love to do a live with you, like anytime
Yes,
soon,
let's.
with
You
people
bet.
answering directly. And yes, I think if people come from a good spot where they want to learn, that's great. Some people are just like trolls and just I
That's fine.
sometimes
They'll be
still
dealt with
fall
as
for them.
such. Yeah, that's cool. I'm used to that.
I'm
I've dealt
getting
with
better
one or
though.
two trolls. Yeah. All right. It's been a pleasure as ever, Roxana. I really do enjoy our chats. It's always good to cross-pollinate and to promote what everyone else is doing around the place. You're doing great work over there on Dr. Berry's PhD society, I guess, whatever you want to call it.
It's actually the American Diabetes Society that he
Yes.
founded, as opposed to
Yes.
the ADA. And it's his community is the proper human diet community. And it's
Yep.
a lot of fun there. We have
Awesome.
weekly Zooms. I do one extra Zoom actually on Patreon that just started. So
Nice.
thank you for being my guest
Pleasure.
today and
Pleasure.
coming on. And I'll catch you next time.
Awesome.
Awesome. Bye-bye.